So a lot of people have been asking me about lifestyle modification. We did a show on lifestyle modification for the treatment of diabetes, which is a huge issue that we have in the United States and around the world. I'm going to talk about lifestyle modification, and we're going to take a little deeper dive into this topic and show you how you can use it to improve your life. So stay tuned. If you're new to me, I'm Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. And here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your life and your health, avoid complications, and live the life you've always wanted, going to the next level. We are, and you've caught us in the middle of our Diabetes Awareness Month, a month-long time of education where we try to dispel the myths that may be out there about diabetes and to help people to understand they can prevent the progression to diabetes and they can treat diabetes if they have diabetes and live a long, healthy life. And that's what I've been doing all month so far on the channel. And on our channel, there is a playlist and it's called Diabetes 101. I think Diabetes 101 series. All the videos that I've done so far for the month are in that playlist. So you want to make sure that you get out there and that you take a look at it. If you've not already done so, go ahead. If you're out there, if you're watching right now, send this to somebody who needs it. Diabetes, as I said, there are almost 500 million people on the planet that have diabetes, and in the United States, 37 million people who suffer from diabetes, and over 90,000 that have pre-diabetes. So we want to make sure that we are giving good information, and that's what we're doing tonight. So on the previous, in the previous episode, I talked about lifestyle modification and gave kind of an outline for lifestyle modification, talked about what that meant. And lifestyle modification is one of those phrases that we often throw out, say, oh, you need to do lifestyle modification, but we don't have the tools or the knowledge, or we don't share the knowledge on how to do that. And so tonight, I'm going to take a little deeper dive on some of those aspects. We're not going to get far into all of them, but enough so that you can begin using it in your life. If you would like additional information, on the YouTube channel, there are videos that I've done on diabetes in the past. And as I get to the end of the month, we've still got almost half a month to go, right? So if there are topics you want me to cover, make sure you drop those in the comments. There was one that we had a comment for. Someone asked a question about how do we calculate carbohydrates, and we're going to deal with that here tonight as we get into part of this discussion. So let's hop over to our slides as we do. And this is lifestyle modification. If you remember, if you saw the previous video, this is the outline that we had. And there are 7 components that I chose. There are others, but I think these are probably the most, these are the most important aspects of lifestyle modification. And you'll see there diet, activity, sleep, stress, and anxiety, depression, pain, and inflammation. And what I want to do as I get into a little deeper dive is I'm going to combine some of these, right? And so let's get to this next graphic. And you'll see there what I've done is diet is one by itself, activity. I've called this section cortisol, and under that cortisol section is listed all the things that you saw previously. So sleep, stress, anxiety, depression, right? And pain. So all those are things that promote cortisol. And then the last one there, you'll see inflammation. So we're going to try to walk through those together. And as I said, if you want more information, there's going to be more on the website. There's going to be more in the on the YouTube channel. And as I go through the month, what I'm doing is I'm preparing different some things that I'm going to put out in social media, on the website, as I put this information together. So as we get to the end of the month, there are going to be some resources that I'm going to make available to you so that you can use and so you can have a practical way of managing this. Okay, so let's get to it. So diet. Wow. So when I say diet, I don't mean that you are on a diet, right? So this is not, oh, am I on a keto diet? Am I on intermittent fasting? Am I paleo? That's not what I mean when I mean diet. Diet simply means the nutrition that you're taking in. Now, in the future, we will do a video where I go through the different diets, right? So that's coming. But in this one, I'm simply talking about the food that we're eating, And if you remember our little question that I had for you, right? Can you spot the carbs? Can you spot the carbohydrates in this graphic that's on the screen? So I've got some potatoes there, cucumber, got some vegetables, got a basket full of vegetables. There's pasta, rice, bread, and a fruit salad. Okay, so can you spot those carbs? Can you spot those carbs there? Why don't you say? What do you say? Let's take a minute. Da, 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 right? Which one is a carb? Which one of those is a carb? And the answer is, if you watch the previous video, the answer is that they are what? They are all carbohydrates, right? Everything on the screen that you see, carbohydrates, the potatoes and the rice and the pasta and the vegetables and the bread and the fruits, right? And the definition of a carb that we're using is really anything that grows out of the ground. Anything that grows out of the ground or anything that came from something that grew out of the ground is a carbohydrate. So when we're talking about carbohydrates, that's what we're talking about. And I mentioned that, or we had a discussion that we usually tell people 45 grams of carbs with meals. That's what we tell them that they should be eating, 45 grams of carbs per meal, 135 carbs per day. Okay. And you can take that. It's kind of like having $135. You can break that up however you want, right? You can go buy $5 worth of stuff here and $2 worth of stuff there and $50 worth of stuff over here, right? And it all adds up to $135. So as you're going through your day, you've been given 135 carbs. That's your allotment. That's your money for the day. And you can spend that however you want. You can eat one carb 135 times, right? Or 13.5 carbs 10 times. Or, as I gave an example yesterday in the last video, you can do 30 for breakfast, 15 for a snack. 30 for lunch, 15 for a snack. 30 for supper, 15 for a snack. And that's really when people talk about, 6 smaller meals per day, that's really how it should be done, right? If that's what you're going to do, right? Or you just break it in half, right? So that you cut the carbs in half and then you have your 6 smaller meals. Now, one of the benefits of having smaller meals, right? And I am not I'm not an advocate necessarily, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but right, you do not have to eat 6 small meals, right? Now, people do it and people teach it and people are having success with it, but that is not a requirement that you have 6 small meals. Now, the benefit of having 6 small meals is this. Whenever you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes up, blood sugar spikes. And when the blood sugar spikes, so does your insulin, right? If you're type 2. For type 1, the blood sugar spikes, right? There's no insulin coming, okay? But at any rate, the blood sugar spikes. And if you're eating smaller meals, then the spike is not as big. So you have a smaller spike, so you don't have those big, giant rises in blood sugar. Okay, so that's one of the virtues of eating smaller meals. But it's not a requirement, right? So 45 grams of carbs. 45 grams of carbs is what I said in our previous video. 135 per day. So how exactly do you estimate carbohydrates? And that was one of the questions that we got from one of our from a message. Let me see if I can back up there and let's see. And that question came from Melissa Hessler. And I believe, Melissa, I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So thank you for watching and thank you for asking the question, right? And her question really, how do you calculate 45 grams of carbs per meal, right? So that's a pretty good question, all right? So Melissa, thank you. Thank you for that question. And so let's talk about that. So 45 grams per carbs per meal. And I'm going to back up to use this slide. Let's see if first. I've got to get over there. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's use this slide, right? We said all these guys are carbohydrates, okay? And for carbohydrates, you have to begin learning, right? What 45 grams of carbs are, right? That's the first thing. And there's something that we don't talk about that I'm going to say here. I'm not going to get too much into it, perhaps later on. But each person responds differently to the same carbohydrate, right? So I don't want to complicate that issue, but each person's body responds differently to the same carbohydrate. You can have the same amount of carbohydrates and your particular blood sugar, insulin metabolism responds slightly differently to that carbohydrate. Now, in general, we should see similar results. But like I said, we may have some differences. Okay, so carbohydrates. So let's take this graphic that's on the screen. So when we think about carbohydrates, the simplest way to do them is to begin thinking in your mind in 15s, right? So carbohydrates are 45 grams that you see there on the screen. So if I break that up into 15, that's 3, right? So when I think about carbs, right, I have 15 grams of carbs, 15 grams of carbs, 15 grams of carbs. If I add those up, then that gives me my 45. It's much easier to think in 15 than to try to estimate what is 45, okay? So the first thing is, when we think about 45 grams of carbs, is beginning to know some of the things that have 15 grams of carbs, for example. So half a banana is about 15 grams of carbs. So half a banana, 15 grams of carbs. A small apple, not like those big giant apples, right? A small apple is about 15 grams of carbs. 10 grapes. Now, 10 grams of 15 grams of carbs. Now, I'll tell you, it's hard sometimes to get 15 grams, eat 15 grams of grapes, right? Because you put your hand in there, you grab it up, and you don't really count how many grapes are in there. But that's about 15 grams of carbs. One slice of bread, right? One slice of bread, on average, notice what I said, on average is between 15 to 20 grams of carbs. And this is white or wheat bread, right? So both of them can have the same number of carbs. And here, we're not talking about fiber, and we're not talking about glycemic index, right? We're not having that discussion right now. This is just, okay, how many carbs are in that particular thing? So then, if I say, well, I have 45 grams of carbs per meal, if I want, I can eat a slice of toast, half a banana, right? That's 30, because 15 and 15. Well, not half a slice, but one slice, or a slice of bread, right? Toasted, right? So one slice of bread toasted, half a banana, right? And then that's 30. And so I still have 15 more to go. Right? See what I just did? So I'm constructing my carbohydrates based on my 15, 15, and 15. Let me do this. So that's a way to estimate. A third of a cup of peas, a third of a cup of rice, 15 grams of carbs. Half a corn on the cob, 15 grams of carbs, right? And so what you begin doing is you begin creating a mental catalog, or you can write it down, right? Until you become familiar with it. So 15 grams of carbs. The other thing is, and I don't have an overhead camera, so I'm going to just use my hand. So let's go ahead and let's pop this, right? So if you can take your hand, right? So make a little cup with your hand. So in here, right? Whatever fits in there, and this is not like cookies, candies, cakes, or whatever. This is like food. Right? If you can fit it in there, that's 15 grams of carbs. Now, I have big hands, right? So if you have giant hands, then don't do like this, right? Because that's not 15. I'm talking about a small cup in there. That's 15 grams of carbs. So if you're looking at your plate, you got 15, 15, 15. That's 45. So 2 hand cups of rice and a half a corn on the cob, that would be your carbs for that meal. Now, notice we're simply right here talking about carbohydrates, right? We're not talking about the protein that's on your plate. Right? Some people say, well, that's not enough food. Yeah, well, hold on. We're just talking about the carbohydrates, right? Not everything, because there's more. There are other things on your plate that you're going to be eating, right? The protein. And in this discussion, this conversation, we're not having a discussion about protein. We're simply dealing with the carbohydrates. So that, Melissa, is how you would calculate carbohydrates. That's a simple way of doing it. Okay, and I can do another video where we go even deeper into carbohydrates and counting and so forth. All right. So diet. So going back to diet, right? So diet. So carbohydrates, right? When you talk about carbohydrates, you want to stay as much as possible with the whole food. I gave an example. Well, let me ask this question. How many oranges do you think you can eat in one setting? Oranges, yeah. How many oranges? Right? People say, well, I could probably eat, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, right? Whatever number it is. If you take those oranges and you squeeze the juice out of them, you'll get a certain amount of juice from those oranges, say 5 oranges. Okay? That's how much fluid you're getting. But you're also getting, and here I'm going to mention the word fiber, right? But we're not getting into fiber. You're also getting fiber. You're getting vitamins and nutrients, right? You're getting all those things in the orange when you eat it. But if you squeeze it and you drink a glass of orange juice, first of all, you don't get all those other things, right? You don't get all you're getting is the juice. And it's much easier to drink 2 glasses of orange juice or 2.5 glasses of orange juice, because we drink what? We don't drink the little 3 to 4 ounce glasses, right? Unless you're like I won't call the restaurant, but they give you little mini ones, right? I get mad when I get that. It's like, what is this? But anyway, right? We drink the 8 ounce glasses. How many oranges do you think you have to squeeze in order to get an 8 ounce glass of orange juice? So when we're not eating the whole food, it's easier for us to consume more calories, more carbohydrates. The same thing when we have something that's highly refined. And that's the idea that people give when they're talking about, and we try to talk about bread, right? So that's when everybody talks about, should I eat a whole wheat bread or white bread or whatever it is? But the original idea between white and whole wheat bread was that whole wheat bread was supposed to be closer to the whole food. But the way that it's processed now, it's probably just has probably similar things as white bread. Right? So when we're talking about whole foods, that's what we're talking about. It's things that are as close as possible to the original form. Right? That's whole food. So we want to eat whole foods. And we want to avoid refined carbohydrates. Once again, the same idea, right? When we eat food nowadays, in today's society, the food is so much denser than the food that we used to eat 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Because remember back, one of the ways that the body works is that food goes into the stomach, it expands the stomach sends a signal to the brain that we're full. Right? That's one of the reflexes. But what has happened is the food has become so dense. The food has become so dense that we can have something that has high calories that goes into the stomach, that gives us the same spike in our blood sugar, but it never stretches the stomach because it's not big enough. It's not bulky enough. And so our brain never tells us that we're full. And so we keep doing what? We keep eating. Right? So there's that mechanism that we lose. And then when we talk about carbohydrates, when we talk about food, portions, right? And before I get to portion, let me make a comment. So you can eat 45 grams of carbs in something that is high in calorie, or you can eat 45 grams of carbs with something. So you can eat high calories in something that has no carbs. Let me say that again. So I can eat something that has high calorie and carbs, or I can eat something that has high calorie and no carbs or lower carbs. For example, I'm going to use this example. So a steak, I could eat a steak that has, lots of calories, right? But a steak itself has absolutely no carbohydrates. Or I could eat a piece of cake that has the same amount of calories as that steak, but now has large carbs. So when we're looking at food, right, and here we're not talking calories necessarily, but I wanted to make that point to people because sometimes I see people go out and, I've got 45 grams of carbs and I'm concentrating on the carbohydrate, but then they go overboard on the calories. And that's a whole nother conversation, right? Just be cautious as you're doing that. So 45 grams of carbs. Yeah, I think that's it. Portions. Got it. Portions. Okay. All right. And then activity. So let's talk about activity for a minute. And you'll see there, I said just move, right? So Michelle Obama was the one who kind of popularized this just move. And this is an interesting conversation because when we think exercise, everybody thinks that they've got to go and join the gym. They've got to go join this fitness center. They've got to join so on and so forth, right? Now, there's a place for that. And really, there are people there who can help you do it better than you may be able to do it around your corner. But you do not have to go to those places to exercise. Just move. In fact, right? Let's do a little experiment, right? So right now, I'm going to do it with my hand, use my entire hand. So if I'm doing this, right, whatever it is, I'm picking up my cup. Let's do that. That's a simple example. I got my cup, right? So I just picked it up and I put it down. In order to do that, my body had to use a muscle. All right, let me come to the screen. All right, in order to do this, I'm using a muscle to do it. Bring it to my mouth. I take a sip. Put it back down. I had to use a muscle to do that activity. That muscle needed energy to be able to do that. And what did we say energy is in the body? Sugar, glucose. So in order to lift the cup, I had to burn energy. And if I'm burning energy, what happens to my blood sugar? My blood sugar goes down. Now notice, I did not go to a gym. I didn't go running, jumping, skipping, swimming, right? I didn't lift any balls. I didn't lift any weights. All I did was I lifted my cup and I took a sip. So when we talk about exercise, when we talk about activity, any activity that you do will burn sugar. Has to. Now, I've got to lift my cup a lot of times to burn enough sugar, right? But my point is that anything that you do will burn sugar. But a lot of people think they've got to go somewhere. No, in your house. Simple thing, right? If you're sitting in your chair, I'm going to make this like as simple and basic as possible. You're sitting, all you do at home, right? All you think you want to do is you want to sit in your chair and watch TV. Right? Okay. Well, how can we make that practically an exercise? Or how can we incorporate exercise in there? Well, you're sitting in your chair, get some 2.5 pound, 5 pound weights, put them on the side of the chair. So while you're sitting there watching whatever you watch, right? So my older patients will watch Bonanza and all the those Westerns and Big Valley and Gunsmoke and all that, right? So whatever the movie, I don't mean to promote all of that stuff. But whatever you watch, if you're a sci-fi, if you're mystery, if you're WB and NBC and sci-fi, all that stuff, right? Whatever you're doing, get some weights. And while you're sitting there, you can lift some weights. When you come into home, if you don't want to go back out, have right at the door, right? Some ankle weights. If you're not going straight to the bathroom to shower and all that stuff, right? When you come in, take your shoes off, put the ankle weights on, and while you're walking around the house, guess what? You're getting some additional exercise. Because when we plan to go and do something later on, it's not going to happen. Or the likelihood of it happening is lower. So make it convenient. Make it simple. Find things that you like to do. I did a video where we talked about exercises. We were going through the New Start. Remember that exercise? So go back and watch that video. Don't do things that are going to hurt yourself, because your body's going to like, no, I'm not doing that again. The last time you took 2 years before you started exercising, and then you decided to exercise, and we were an hour and a half on the treadmill. No, your body's going to rebel. Your muscles are going to rebel. Right? So we recommend when we're talking about exercising, right? When we talk about exercising, make it simple, do something you like, make it convenient, 30 minutes a day, 7 days a week. Yes, you heard me right. 30 minutes a day, 7 days a week. Now you can break the 30 minutes up. You don't have to do it all at one time, right? So maybe you have 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, but each day you want 30 minutes. Just build it into your routine. So one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit here for diabetics, and for everyone in general, but diabetics specifically, because they'll see this result. Diabetics will go to the gym or they'll go exercise, and one of two things will happen. Either their blood sugar will go low, right? Because we tell people if you exercise, blood sugar decreases. Or their blood sugar will go high. Now, the low, they understand, and we got to figure out how to prevent that. The high, people don't understand. So let's talk through that a little bit. So when you're doing exercising, there are two types of exercising that you probably will do. Either aerobic, right? So running, jumping, skipping, swimming, right? Or strength training. And we tell people they should do both. Both strength training, and you should incorporate both into your routines. Running, jumping, skipping, swimming, when you do that, right, during the process of doing those activities, your body is quickly burning sugar. So sometimes during the activity or by the end of the activity, your blood sugars have dropped. So if that's happening to you, talk with your healthcare provider. And a lot of times I will tell my patients, what I want you to do is I want you to decrease. If you're taking insulin before you go, don't take as much. You may have to not take your medicine that morning, or not as much medicine, or you may have to take a snack with you, something, right, to be able to offset what's going to happen during the activity. Right. Now, for our type 2 patients, this is probably a simpler process because we don't want to force you to eat to keep the blood sugar up. That doesn't make sense. That's counterproductive or counterintuitive, right? Well, both. Because we're making you eat food to keep the blood sugar up so that you can exercise, which we're doing to burn blood sugar and to lose weight, right? So we're contributing to the problem. So the answer for patients who have diabetes, who are type 2, who are going low during activity, right, is usually to decrease the amount of medication that they're taking. So it's not to increase the food that they eat. It's for type 2s. For type 1s, because they require insulin, sometimes it's difficult to decrease the medication. Now, usually you can do that, an hour or so during that process, or you can it's simpler for people who are on a pump, by the way. But for patients who are taking insulin shots, type 1 diabetics, what we may need to do is decrease the amount of insulin that you take as you go into activity. All right? Does that make sense? All right. So that's running, jumping, skipping, swimming. Yeah. When we talk about strength training, what will typically happen for people who are strength training is at the end of the activity, their blood sugar will be high. And the question is why? And the answer comes in the activity that you're doing, right? Because what you're doing is you're forcing the body to dump a bunch of energy into the system because you're getting ready, you're lifting stuff, right? With the other thing, when you're running, jumping, skipping, you're moving, but the body is able to give you some energy as you're going through the activity. But when you're strength training, when you're lifting, the body doesn't know how much you need. I mean, I don't know how many pounds you're about to lift. So here, you take all of this sugar, and when you're done with it, we'll deal with it. And you go through and you do your routine, whatever it is you're doing, you're lifting, right? Deadlifting, right? Whatever you're doing. And then at the end, the excess sugar that came out, you still have, and we got to deal with it. So for our type 1, for our patients who are doing running, jumping, skipping, the aerobic exercises, they tend to go low either during or right after. And people who are strength training tend to go low 12 to 18 hours later. So, 12 hours average. So they'll lift, and right after they lift, right after they do their strength training, the blood sugar is higher. And then over time, the body starts dealing with it, and then it goes down, and they have hypoglycemia. Can have hypoglycemia later on. Now, let's talk about the people who are doing, the low blood sugars right after they exercise. Now, back in the day, I remember, I'm old enough to remember that we used to go to school, and sometimes we didn't lift any, right? We did what's called isometric stretching. So you'd stand there and you'd flex. It's almost like, like you're showing off your muscles, right? You're flexing. So if you flex your muscles, the body thinks that you are lifting, like you're doing weight training. And what does it do? It pumps out some sugar. Yeah. So for people who tend to go low when they're doing those aerobic exercises, I tell them at the end of their exercise, whatever the routine they've done, they've run, jump, skip, they're on this treadmill, so forth, stand for about a minute or so and just flex. Try to all the muscles, right? You gotta get the back muscles. And what that does is it forces it forces some sugar out of the system, and that keeps the blood sugar up a little bit so they don't go low as often, right? So try that if you're having those issues. For the people who are strength training, there's not a simple way of dealing with the highs that you get, and you'll just have to kind of work with it, right? You'll begin knowing your body, right, and how to adjust your medication. With all of this, and didn't say that at the beginning, you got to check with your healthcare provider. I think I did say that, but yeah, make sure you're checking with your healthcare provider about how they want you to proceed, okay? And then when we talk about activity, find a tribe. Find a group of people that you're going to do it with, because it's much easier to do it with people than it is to do it without people, right? It's just numination. It's fun. It's fun. You guys can do challenges. And, I was on, of course, as soon as I said that, I forgot the app name. Yeah. Anyway, I was on an app. I used to use an app, and we would do challenges with each other on there, right? And we get the badges and so forth. Okay. All right. And then cortisol, which is the next one that you see there. Cortisol. And actually, let me hop over here. And yeah, so just move. Just move. Find an activity you like. This is for the exercise. This is for the activity. And just do it. Whatever it is, right? Make sure you like it. Because we want you to do it long term. Right? And then cortisol. So I've lumped under cortisol sleep, stress, anxiety, depression, right? Pain, all those things, because they all have the similar common pathway. That is, cortisol comes out, epinephrine comes out. Epinephrine sensitizes the body to cortisol. Cortisol and epinephrine, their job is to go out and find energy because they think you're about to be chased by a tiger or something, right? So some anxiety-provoking, stress-provoking event is happening. And so the body goes and prepares. Okay, here's some sugar. Let's get it, and because we need to be running, or else we're going to be tiger food. Now, the interesting thing there is that our lives are such that we often find ourselves in a stressful situation when there's no tiger chasing us. We're not falling out of a building. Nothing's hit us. We're just stressed because we're about to have a conversation with our cousin. with our sister, with our mom, or our dad, right? That produces some anxiety. There's something going on the job. You've got a report that you've got to do. There's a class that you're taking, right? So the anxiety. And we tend to live our lives today in almost a tonic stressful situation. And so the cortisol and the epinephrine are always out. And that causes us problems for blood sugar, right? So number one, sleep. We got to get sleep. So 7 hours, at least 7 hours of sleep, of restful sleep, because during sleep, it's restorative. The body rebuilds. The body incorporates. Our mind takes all the stuff that we learned and all the stuff that we saw. Because remember, there are about 2,000 signals coming at us at any one time. And so all day we have all this stuff that's coming in, and our brains, the way the brain functions, the way the brain helps us is that the brain begins to summarize all that information because it can't take 2,000 signals. And so we ignore some, we summarize some, and while we sleep, the brain incorporates all that stuff, right? It assimilates it and say, okay, I'm making sense out of this stuff. So we're going to get good sleep. If you get good sleep, it improves your sex life. That's right. Yeah. So if there's not a motivation, there it is. Right? Because we get testosterone and a whole bunch of other things that go on while we sleep. All right. Coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms have been demonized. Do you know what a coping mechanism is? It's your body's way, your brain's way of helping you get through whatever it is that you're getting through. Whatever situation is there. Yeah. I was listening to someone recently, well, not recently, but maybe a year ago, and she was talking about buffering. So buffering are those activities that we do when we're coping. Now, there are mechanisms that are not healthy, that do more damage to our bodies and to our mind. Okay, so those are the addictions. Those are the alcohol and the drugs, and we can add some other things in there, right? So we talk about those, but there's overworking, right? That's a bad one, right? Overstressing and so forth. And one of the coping mechanisms when we talk about diabetes and lifestyle and pre-diabetes and insulin resistance is people eat to cope. People eat to cope. Now, before everybody jumps on me, right, let me say I'm not giving people permission to overeat. But you know what would happen to you if you did not have the coping mechanism that your body chose? Because the whole point is to find a way of dealing with the situation, whatever the stress is, the anxiety, right? You got to find a way to deal with that. And if you had a better way of dealing with it, that's the way to do it, right? Where you sit down and you talk to people and you tell them what's going on and you get it all off your chest, or you journal, right? All the things that we talk about. But if you don't have those in place, do you know what you do when stress comes? You go to whatever it is that makes you feel good, a coping mechanism. You eat, right? I'm not going to talk about the drugs and the alcohol, right? Because those are not appropriate coping mechanisms. We're talking about appropriate ones now. But we take someone who is going through a divorce, someone who has a family member that's sick, someone who's having financial trouble, someone who's having problem with their kids, right? Whatever it is. And the way they're coping is they eat. And if you're diabetic, guess what? Your blood sugar is going to go up, right? Because we just said. And I've never seen somebody who said, I was craving a steak. I was craving some chicken. You know what they crave? Ice cream, cookies, cake, pasta, bread, chocolate. I don't know what that is, right? Because those are the things that when we're coping, that's what we eat. So we take that person who's in that situation, and we also, on top of the fact that they're going through that situation, we now beat them over the head, right? And say, hey, you shouldn't be eating that. Well, the reason they're eating it is because they can't cope with the situation that's there. So if we teach them how to cope with the situation, then they don't eat that much, right? So we deal with the wrong thing. So that's what a coping mechanism is. And so our goal, whenever we are dealing with this cortisol, this stress, is, okay, how do we manage? How do we cope appropriately? How do we learn coping skills? And that's what we've got to do. That's what you've got to do. Find a way of dealing with those coping skills, or dealing with those things with appropriate coping mechanisms. Counseling. Huge, huge, huge. All of our counselors out there, my hat's off to you. Thank you for what you do for the diabetic community and the community at large. All of you. Because we could not survive without you. Depression, stress, anxiety, huge within the diabetic community for lots of reasons. Whether people are stressed or depressed because they have diabetes. I mean, this is a huge diagnosis, right? All the things that come with it. And you know what? Yeah, we don't counsel people when they get a diagnosis of diabetes. We just say, oh, you're diabetic. Here, go home and do this stuff. We don't talk to them about what that means. What does that mean to you? What does that mean for you? Because now all of a sudden, this disease process is in your body, and everywhere you turn, somebody's talking about diabetes. And every time you turn, somebody's telling you shouldn't eat this, or you shouldn't do that, or what are you doing? Or you're right. So there's all this stuff that's going on, and we never have a time when we say to the person, hey, let's talk about how this is going to go. So thank you to our counselors. But if you're having issues, counseling, and now I'm talking about the diabetes issues, right? But there are things outside of diabetes that will affect diabetes, right? Whether you're having problems with your marriage, you're having problems on your job, with your children, right? Financial problems. You're having other health challenges that are unrelated to diabetes. Those will affect your blood sugar. So make sure that you are getting the appropriate counseling. And once again, the final thing there is community. People who are in community tend to do better. People who are connected do better. We are built for connection as human beings. And that helps with the sleep, the stress, the anxiety, the depression, all of those things. And then the final one that's under here is pain. If you are in pain, pain causes depression, anxiety. Pain causes life in general to not be as quality as it could be. So if you're in pain, find your healthcare provider, and you guys need to talk about, okay, what do I do now? How do I take care of this? It's cortisol. So we've lumped all of those together. And then inflammation. Inflammation is huge because there are so many things that go on in the body that are considered autoimmune. We got all these autoimmune diseases, right? Whenever there's inflammation, the entire body goes on alert. Now you can have a cut in your hand, or a broken bone or a joint or something that's in your tip of your right finger. But even though it's in the tip of your right finger, the entire rest of the body is on alert because we got to do something about that. But we don't think about that. So all of a sudden, we find that our blood sugars are a little higher, and we don't understand why. Because you've become a little bit more insulin resistant because there's an inflammatory process going on. All of a sudden, we can't sleep well. Why? Because cortisol is out and epinephrine is out. Our brains are going. And every little bit of thing that happens in the body that throws it off affects so much. Like I've had people come to the office and their blood sugars have gone. They used to have, their blood sugars were great, right? 120, 109, 110, 99. And they come in and the blood sugars are now 150, 200. They say, well, I don't know what's going on there. And I said, well, what's been happening since you saw me last? Right? So we're going through all this stuff, little stuff going on. And I had pneumonia about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. They put me on some antibiotics. Inflammation. Right? Or my knee has been swollen. Or my back has been hurting. Or whatever is going on, right? But there's not a correlation in their mind that, okay, this stuff is probably causing some of what I'm seeing. And what happens during that process is people decrease. They cut back on their food. They cut back on their food. They cut back on their food. And they come in and they're so frustrated because they say, well, all I'm eating is like 2 leaves of lettuce once a day. And my blood sugars are still high. I say, well, it's not a food problem. Right? So inflammation. So there are some things that I typically tell people. And turmeric, curcumin, is probably one of the biggest things, the highest thing on our lists, right? So curcumin, we tell people vitamin D, which is not listed there. We tell people, hey, get some vitamin D. I tell people to use some probiotics, some prebiotics, right? Make sure they're taking some omega-3, right? So all those things that are pro-inflammatory. Or, anti-inflammatory. Not pro-inflammatory, right? And then avoid highly refined sugars and foods, because those refined sugars and foods are also they are pro-inflammatory. They make the body go into inflammation. Right? Food is medicine. There's some things that you personally need to avoid. And you know those things. You eat them and you don't feel quite as well. Your skin itches or you get a rash right? You know what's going on there? Yeah, it's inflammation. But there's some things that we like so much. And I tell people, it's not that you got to avoid them all the time, right? Maybe you should. But if you're noticing that and you know that this is something that you normally eat, and people say, well, I don't understand why food X causes that. I don't understand it either, but it does. So don't eat it. Cut back on it. It's like, but it tastes so good. I know, but look what it's doing. All right, so avoid highly refined foods. Fresh fruits and vegetables. And this goes all the way back to when we were talking about diet, right? Whole foods. Fresh fruits and vegetables. Get a variety. People say, well, how do I know if I'm getting enough vitamins and minerals and so forth, right? For the most part, right, there are some specifics, right, some exceptions. But for the most part, if you're eating a well-balanced diet and people say, oh, include all the different colors, that makes sense because all the different colors has different stuff, right? All those different colors are different things that the plants have that are beneficial to us. Everybody talks about phytonutrients and phytochemicals and so forth, right? So make sure that you are eating a variety of things, fruits, vegetables, because you get vitamins, minerals, fluids. Once again, you get the fiber. Amazing what we get from fruits and vegetables. And often people they get the get the message that they should avoid fruits. Well, no, it's not that you should avoid fruits. It's that people are eating fruits and they're eating pasta and rice and bread and potatoes and right. The fruits are not bad, but anything when combined with refined stuff is not gonna work. Right? It has to be a balance there. There's always a solution. Now, let me jump in there because you say, oh no, there's not a solution for this and that and so forth. What I mean by that is there are always things that we can do to help improve. We may not get it to 100%. Often in my office, I talk to people about different diseases that we treat. And I tell them that we will try, any combination of lots of things. We may not get 100%, but we want to get the best that we can. And if you've been diabetic for so long and you've got all these complications, right? Because whatever, it may seem depressing. It may seem that there is no hope. And people say, well, I mean, I've already got all these complications. Why do anything else? Because there's always a solution. There's always a way to prevent progression. There's always a way to do something else. There's always a way, right? If you got neuropathy, let's stop you from having retinopathy. If you've got nephropathy, let's stop you from having right? So some is better than none. So lifestyle modification. There is a question. Let's see. So Jeff, hey Jeff, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming by. Jeff says, is pepper required with turmeric? Is pepper required with turmeric? And Jeff, the answer is no. You can actually have turmeric and use it by itself. You want to make sure, and curcumin is the active ingredients that we're looking for. I don't have a specific brand that I recommend to people. I said, get whatever you can over the counter. Go to the health food store, and they'll be able to help you there. But you do not necessarily need pepper with the turmeric. Right, good. Thank you. Good question. All right, and this is a good place for us to hop over to our amazing question wheel. All right. So question wheel. If you've been with us, you know what this is. If you haven't, let me explain. So on the screen, you see our questions on a wheel, and I'm going to spin the wheel, and whatever question it lands on, I'm going to answer, right? So I've got to give you a concise, usable, practical, right, piece of information, right? It can't just be nonsensical. It has to be like for real. And so I'm going to answer that question. And the caveat is that I have 45 seconds, right? So that's the challenge. I've got 45 seconds to answer the question. That is to give the answer. I'm going to think about the answer because I give you something real. And then I'm going to answer that question, all right? And then I'm going to take that answer, I'm going to clip it out of the show, and I'm going to create a video with it, and I'm going to post it on our social media platforms, okay? That's what we're going to be doing. And I want you to go out and find it, right? Let me pop up this other screen so you can see. So under my name there, Dwayne Wood MD, you can find me on all social media platforms, well, the ones that we're on, at Dwayne Wood MD. So TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, right? And of course here on YouTube. I want you to find the video, and I want you to put in the video hashtag I was there. Hashtag I was there. Okay, let me put that in there so that you guys see. I'm gonna have to put it on my little button so that I was there. So that's been okay. There we go. So hashtag I was there. So find the video on the social media platform and say hashtag I was there, right? And so you get to see me do it here. All right. So let's see. So let me get that off, and let's go ahead and let's spin the wheel and see what we get. Well, before I do that, let me just acknowledge somebody. Tatiana Teaches. Thank you. Dwayne popping in to say hello. Your graphics are looking fabulous. Thank you so much, and thank you for coming by. Let's go ahead. And actually, Jeff, I didn't even give you a hand clap, and let's do that for both of you. Woo! Always love when we have guests that come by. So thank you, Tatiana, for jumping by. And Jeff, thank you as well. And shout out to you because you asked a couple of questions in the week. So I hope those were beneficial to you. All right. So let's go ahead and let's get back to our screen, and then let's get to our amazing question wheel. Here we go. All right, let's spin. Round and round and round it goes. Where it stops, I don't know. I know why I say that every time, right? All right, let's see. How long does it take for diabetes to cause kidney damage? Okay, yeah. And we had if you guys remember, we had a similar question about retinopathy. All right, so let's go ahead. So 45 seconds on the clock. And I think I'm going to extend the question, and I'm going to incorporate some other things there, okay? So let's see if I can do that, right? Not just answer this question, but add some additional information. So here we go, 45 seconds on the clock, and then we'll go. So how long does it take for someone with diabetes to develop nephropathy or kidney disease? Well, for both nephropathy, neuropathy, and retinopathy, which are the triopathies of diabetes, after about 10 to 15 years, you begin to see complications and see signs that diabetes is beginning to affect those areas. So about 10 to 15 years is the answer. All right, did I do it? Oh, wow. I did that in like 15 seconds, didn't I? Woo! All right. Love that. All right. So let me hop back here and let's once again talk about our lifestyle modification. So we're doing a little deeper dive. So diet, activity, cortisol, and inflammation. Those are the things that we talked about. This is the non-medication way, right? So this is lifestyle modification. Remember, we talked about 3: lifestyle modification, non-prescription, and then prescription, right? So we're walking through those as we go. Awesome. Love it. All right. So I hope that answers all of your questions. If you have additional questions, go ahead and let's put that in the comments if you have other things, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. So Tatiana says, she hand clap. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then she said, oh, why? Wow, I was going to say 1 year. No, it's actually longer. And that's why we say during those first years, it is so critical, Tatiana, to get control of blood sugars, right? And so one of the things I try to get patients to understand when we're talking, and they'll say, oh, my blood sugars, they're getting better, right? They're getting better. Like my A1C was a 10 and now it's an 8 and it's getting better. Isn't that good enough? And the answer, frankly, is no, right? Because particularly for those patients who don't have significant signs of complications yet, or those patients who are early on in their disease, because we know if we can get it so quick, if we can get that managed and keep those blood sugars down, get them to goal, then we can decrease the progression, right? So if you're recently diagnosed and your doctor is pushing to get those down, or even if you've been diagnosed for years and you're not seeing as many complications, or even if you have complications and your healthcare provider is pushing to get that number down, there's a reason. It's not that just they want good blood sugars, right? Remember, our goal is long, healthy life. And the best way that we know how to do that is to get these numbers under control. Awesome. All right. Well, so we all know that changing our habits can be tough. After all, old habits die hard for a reason. But if we want to see real results, we need to take a holistic approach. That means looking at our overall health and lifestyle and making changes in multiple areas, not just one. For example, if you want to eat healthier, then you've got to do that. If you want to have better blood sugars, you need to exercise. Make sure we're getting enough sleep. Make sure we're managing our stresses. We need to be mindful of the food that we're eating and make sure we're staying hydrated. We didn't talk about water, but that's another one. All of these things play a role in our overall health. And if we want to see real results, we need to address them all. So when we're talking about diabetes, let's not just focus on one area. All of it impacts what we do. I am so excited that you guys have been here for this episode as I walk through Diabetes Awareness Month 2022. I keep trying to get to 2023. If you like this video, if you like what we're doing, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Go ahead and share this, like it, send it to your family, friends, those people who you know may need it, and even people who are not diabetic. If you are a healthcare provider and you're out there, this is a perfect place for your patients to come to get good information, right? So send them this link, send them this playlist. It's going to be called Diabetes 101. I think it's called Diabetes 101 series. So much valuable information that is here. If you have not already done so, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Right, hit the notification bell so that you'll be alerted when new things come up, when we put new things on the website and on the channel. If you don't have an account, please log in or create a free account, log in and hit that subscription and notification as well. And then finally, send, share, like, send it to everybody on all your social media platforms. I would love for you to do that, right? Just copy the link and put it in your Facebook, put it in your Instagram, put it in your Twitter, wherever you are. Let people know that I'm here. This does a lot of things, right? Number one, it lets me know that, hey, this is some valuable information that you're giving, right? And when people ask questions, when people have additional information, then I can get that from them, right? So we're connecting. You're connecting with me. I'm building a community. The community is with the intention of educating, empowering, and encouraging, right? So that's what happens when you subscribe. And then it lets YouTube and all the social media people know that this is valuable information, okay? So that's what I want you to do. Thank you for coming. This is Dr. Dwayne Wood. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. And here on my channel, I educate, I encourage, I empower you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, and live the life you've always wanted, going to the next level. We're in the midst of Diabetes Awareness Month. And I want you to come on back for the next episode that we're going to have so that you can join us. Let's see. Tatiana says, she said, oh, wow. She said, let's pop this. Yes, I do know someone with diabetes. Yeah. It's a big issue. Amen. Long, healthy life. That's what we're shooting for. Don't rush into the next year. I know. I did something recently online and I put 2023. So yeah, thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you. Have a great evening and we'll see you at the next video. Good night.